It's an oft-noted fact that despite being the namesake of one of the most well-beloved game series, Princess Zelda herself is yet to star as the protagonist in one of the games. Well, with one obvious and very just exception. And as much as I adore Link, it feels like a real shame that even coming up to Breath of the Wild 2, we're still passing by seemingly perfect opportunities for her to take center stage. Even something spin-offy in the vein of the lesser-remembered Super Princess Peach, which is quite a good time, I might add, would be incredibly welcome. But you know, Nintendo's right. Tingle is a much more deserving character. Tingle's Rosy Rupeeland. Not the most well-known Zelda game out there, and for multiple good reasons. It never saw a release in North America, and obviously it wasn't exactly a smash hit in Europe. But to be fair to the game, it supposedly sold quite well in Japan, which can be attributed to their lack of utter disdain for Tingle himself. So all in all, it's a bit of a hard find outside of Japan, hence why I ended up getting a Japanese copy. It was developed by Vanpool, who later went on to develop the Dylan's Rolling Western series, so that's fun. And, other things. I mean, co-developed and direction are vague terms. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt. The plot sees a middle-aged man cursed and transformed into Tingle, with the promise that if he collects enough rupees, he'll be able to go to Rupeeland, a paradise of all his wildest dreams. Ignoring the terrifying implications of the nature of what Tingle himself is, your goal is to travel across numerous locales, solve quests, delve into dungeons, and sell anything that you can in an attempt to grow the Rupee Tower all the way to the Land of Wonder that he seeks. I don't think you need me to tell you that this game is absolutely bonkers. As you can see from his rosy-cheeked expression, being Tingle is pain. Everyone treats him horribly and only wants to interact with him when he proves that he has money that they can extort from his very life force. The world here is pretty varied and the character designs are striking, but still, we're talking about a game where the most likable character in the room is meant to be Tingle of all people. The bar is already very low, but the characters you meet will still find many ways of not being very likable at all. They are memorable though. You may not be looking back on Chico's mother fondly, but you Betty Boopy believe she's going to be sitting in the back of your brain taking up precious space for the rest of your life. As previously mentioned, Tingle's goal is to reach Rupeeland, a heavenly place promised to him for the small price of throwing the world's life savings into a pond. There's multiple methods of grinding out the cash you need, the simplest being gathering materials from around the world and mixing them into potions and other such bottled goods. These can then be sold to a nearby town for that sweet, sweet Tingle blood you crave. And this is where the combat mechanic comes into play. Most materials are found by fighting the local fauna. To do so, all you have to do is run into them and a scuffle breaks out where you both lose health until one of you dies. And if you're clever, you can chain these together for the potential of greater rewards at a higher risk. And since your health is also your wallet, you really do have to consider how best to tackle these scuffles lest you come out at a loss. After a certain point, you can then start hiring bodyguards to help do this for you, mitigating the risk significantly. It's not mind-blowing by any stretch, but it is rather unique, a common theme throughout the whole game. When you complete a quest for someone, they then offer to pay you for your trouble, and this is your big money-making scheme, but it does have a catch. They don't simply give you the cash. You'll have to tell them what you think you're worth like it's some horrible job interview. And to make matters more frustrating, lowball too much and you'll have to make up for the missed profits by grinding out materials like normal. Put your asking price too high and they'll be disgusted at your greed and give you nothing. No take backsies. And I could be wrong, but I got about 3/4 of the way through the game and I don't think there's any way to know how much money they're actually wanting from you. This frustration is mimicked when you hire bodyguards to assist you. If you don't offer enough rupees, they will still take their service fee and then proceed to ask you to try again. I think you can already see why this would be rather frustrating, but to drive the point home, if you were to overshoot on all these bartering moments in any given area, you would miss out on the majority of the rupees you would need to get to the next one. So instead, you have to slowly grind it out bit by bit, making the quest you just did pointless. It ain't fun. And since this is still technically a Zelda game, there are actually dungeons here. Unfortunately, they aren't nearly as exciting as any of Link's usual fare, but there are some creative mechanics to be found in them. Usually involving you losing copious amounts of rupees as you try to figure out how to engage with them, but still, it's stuff that you can appreciate the design of. Bosses are found at the end of each of these, and the fights play completely differently to anything else in the game, which is always exciting to see how it will play out. For your effort, you're rewarded with a load of rupees, usually enough to progress, and the game's version of the usual Zelda MacGuffin, a Super Rupee. Truly, this game is a veritable mixing pot of gameplay mechanics and situations. It'd be hard to argue that it's not constantly interesting. And I should mention, full disclosure, I actually didn't finish the game. Not because it was too hard or I couldn't understand anything, I simply stopped having fun. The guesswork and frustration of arbitrarily missing out on your rewards and just the plain constant feeling of the game being against you at every turn just killed my enjoyment. But oddly enough, I wouldn't say I think it's a bad game or even badly made. It sets out to be a Tingle simulator, and what is more Tingle than everyone only talking to you when you can help them, and trudging through the unfairness of a world which only cares about money. It achieves its goal expertly, and I can't help but respect it. For all the points I don't like about the game, it feels like nearly each and every one suits the game perfectly, and I don't even know if I'd change any of them, lest the game lose its identity. It's complicated, almost like Tingle when you think about it. Nah, I'm just kidding. Tingle is a middle-aged man prancing around in green spandex. Here's what it says on the tin. All of the text is in hiragana, and the font is a choice. These two elements together actually make this a bit of a tough read if you like even the most basic of kanji to spice up your experience. Many a time I didn't understand a line of dialogue, doubled back, and then realized that I totally did understand it. I was just used to seeing the kanji instead. So that can be a touch annoying, but ultimately that's up to how good you are at code switching between kanji and no kanji. And I'd say if you're not a fan of kanji or plain haven't learned a whole bunch yet, this will be a bit of a dream scenario. Either way, since this is a common trait of more family-oriented games, it's worth getting used to. Amazing how a script choice to make it easier to read in the native tongue can trip up language learners and make it much harder. Otherwise though, the grammar and vocabulary lean towards a more universal array. You could probably get away with N4 level stuff, because you're not going to be seeing much in the way of genre-specific vocabulary. But as usual, being in the N3 wheelhouse is going to be a much more comfortable experience. A lot of the puzzle solving comes from understanding what the people around you are telling you to do, so wandering around aimlessly is going to produce results significantly slower. There's already a hefty dose of blind exploration, so it's not too fun if you miss out on the reward, because you didn't understand it. Ergo, we've got a healthy dose of reading comprehension incentive, which is what we're looking for. On the flip side though, comprehension may not be enough, and when it's not, you're not going to feel very validated about your skills. You're going to be up against the frustration of the game itself on top of the natural highs and lows of playing something in a foreign language. And I might remind you, this isn't a region-locked game. You're not going to be rewarded with a hidden experience that you couldn't get in English. Personally, I was treating it as a quirky region-locked game to keep me going as long as I did, but lifting that veil and giving someone the option, I'd say you'd probably pick the English option. And knowing this game, I can only imagine that the localization is something special, so who knows, it might be a lot more fun that way. As long as you can read hiragana and katakana, you're ready to go with Tingle's adventure. That doesn't mean it will be easy to understand a lot of the sentence patterns and linguistic context, but it's the bare minimum for entry, so that's a big plus for beginners. The vocabulary and grammar is basic for the most part, so with a little searching and study, I'd say a beginner could make it through this just fine. Zero reason to play this one in Japanese if you don't care to learn it. It's got an English release, albeit on the rarer side, and the game is frustrating enough even when you can understand it. I can't imagine why you'd want to go through this one like that. For more advanced learners, I personally don't feel this is a great candidate for Japanese learning. The lack of kanji makes it hard to read if you've started learning it, and it's not really all that stimulating in the first place, to get specifically for that purpose at least. For beginners, however, if you're down to get down with a dictionary and smash out some grammar points, this could be a great place to see what you've learned in practice. I've said it before and I'll say it again, this game is rather frustrating and annoying at times, so if you're not keen to push through the more obtuse nature of its puzzles, you might find yourself burnt out trying to determine if it's the game's fault or your own. There is potential there, but the circumstances for that potential are pretty narrow. Tingle's Rosy Rupeeland is a thoroughly unique experience, and I can safely say there is no game like it. It's filled with a wild world of suitably selfish characters and has a lot of love put into it. But it is also an equally and thoroughly frustrating experience. Progression is marred by an obtuse and borderline unfair bartering system, and quirks aside, the gameplay isn't anything riveting, it's just different. But despite this, I will say I really do like the game. My criticisms aside, it's a real hidden gem if that's what floats your boat. I honestly wish I enjoyed it more to stick it to the ending, which I do know goes places, so perhaps that'll incentivize me to pick it back up later down the track. So yeah, it's a solid, I couldn't stomach finishing it, but I like its gumption out of 10. And that was Tingle's Rosy Rupeeland. What a crazy thing for Tingle to have his own game, am I right? Well, it was a fun experiment, and now we can move on to good Zelda characters getting their own games. Oh look, it's Tingle's Love Balloon Trip, the sequel game that has a completely different gameplay style and was only released in Japan, making it a much better choice for a video like this. And Zelda still doesn't get one game, huh? Well, we'll get to that one in due course, but until next time, ja mata!